Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the What Shara Made podcast. Thank you so much for joining me again if you're a returning viewer, and thank you for joining me for the first time if this is your first episode of the What Shara Made podcast. I hope you enjoy it. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas. I hope it was relaxing and calm and you had lots of fun and got to spend it with people that you love. I had a wonderful Christmas day. It was very stress-free and relaxed, and everyone brought part of the food, so no one person had to make everything. And I made my famous caprese salad, and that's got little cherry tomatoes and baby bocconcini and basil in it with a maple syrup and balsamic vinegar dressing. So it was Christmas colours and it went well with our meal. It was 1 billion degrees here, of course, on Christmas Day, so we had a cold lunch. My brother bought a big local smoked salmon with him. That was beautiful. And my sister made an amazing Christmas cake, and we had some local turkey and chicken all cooked the day before so that we didn't have to have the ovens on or anything like that on boiling hot Christmas Day. And my mum also made a trifle, and I'm not sure if everyone around the world has trifle or knows what trifle is, but I think it was the best one Mum has ever made, and she makes a pretty good trifle. This one was brilliant. I'm still thinking about it. Anyway, I got lots of lovely things for Christmas. It was beautiful. I even got myself some Christmas presents, which I don't normally do, but on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, in Australia, that is our crazy shopping day. That's when everything goes on sale and shops have crazy sales and things like that. And the shops are insanely busy and it's horrible. And I don't normally partake in those sorts of things. I just think it's ridiculous. I'm not a huge fan of big shopping centres and malls anyway. But I don't know, I lost my mind for a moment and decided that I would go shopping on Boxing Day with everyone else in Australia. But I managed to pick up a few bargains. It was good. It wasn't too mental and everyone was still pretty jolly because it was Christmas time, and so it wasn't too bad. And moving right along, I would just like to say a very special thank you to Sandra from the Craftfulness podcast. This morning I got up and I made my breakfast and I thought, right, well, the house is nice and quiet. I'll sit down, enjoy my breakfast and watch a few knitting podcasts. And when I turned it on, there was Sandra with a new episode, which I'd been looking forward to for a little while. So I played it, and to my surprise, she had some really lovely things to say about myself and my podcast, and it was so nice. It was a real thrill, actually. I felt like we were talking in real life, Sandra, and you were saying hello to me and I was waving at the screen and saying hello back. But it was really lovely So if you haven't checked out Sandra's podcast, you really should. It's really fun, and she makes some beautiful things, and she's in the Netherlands, and it's a really lovely podcast, and she has this beautiful segment at the end of each podcast where she talks about mindfulness and crafting together. And she's actually having a mindfulness and crafting knit along, crochet along, beginning in the new year, so you might like to check out her podcast. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can find it as well. Now I'm going to start with some whips. Believe it or not, I am still going on that secret knitting, the secret Christmas knitting that I've been doing. I'm now not going to see that recipient for a few more days later than I thought, so I've got a tiny bit more time up my sleeve, but it is just insane. I'm spending 8 to 12 hours a day knitting on this thing. I'm not even exaggerating. That is how much I'm knitting on this thing, and I think I'm maybe 2/3 of the way through it, and I think the last third is actually a little bit easier than the first 2/3, and I think it'll go a little faster. I hope, fingers crossed. On Monday I was thinking, I'm going to have this finished by Wednesday and I'll be able to show it on the podcast, and I'm going to have this finished so quickly. By Tuesday I was thinking, oh my god, I am never going to ever finish this thing. I'm going to be knitting until March on this thing. And when I'm knitting it, of course, all I can think about is all the other things I want to cast on right now, but I've controlled myself. I just want to get it done, and it looks amazing, and I think once I show you, you'll understand why it was so complicated and took so long to knit. I think you'll be proud of me. But let me show you some whips that I can actually talk about and show. On the Little Bobbins and Knits podcast, which is really lovely, hello Danny, she has a Christmas Eve cast on for socks, and I thought I would join in this year, and I cast on these socks. Obviously you can see it's not finished, but you can see the detail, sort of, and you can also see how lumpy and bumpy this yarn is. This will be the third sock that I have knit with this yarn. The first one I unravelled, and then I cast on another sock and knit that, and then I unravelled that, and now I've cast on this sock and knit this. And the yarn is like really squiggly, and it is really showing in the fabric. Fingers crossed it comes out in a blocking. It's looking a bit strange. They're just for me, so it doesn't really matter. But I've never really come across that before. Of course I've unravelled things and reused yarn before, but it's never been quite so obvious that that's what I am doing. The lumpy bumpy nature of the yarn hasn't quite been as apparent in those knitted pieces as it is in this one, but oh well. And I'm not using a pattern for this. I've just got a little picot edge, which is really cute. I love doing those. And a little bit of a star stitch pattern that's probably not visible. Well, maybe it is. And I've used the Fish Lips Kiss Heel, of course, my favourite. And the yarn that I'm using is one that I've dyed myself. It's a 75% wool, 25% nylon sock yarn, and I've dyed it in, it's not really showing up accurately, but it's a really pale green with speckles of chocolate brown, sunshine yellow, and a hot pink. It's really nice actually. I love the way this yarn dyed up, and I think I'll probably dye some more like this too, because I certainly love a speckled yarn. I'm thinking of maybe even getting really courageous and dyeing a sweater's quantity of this in maybe a DK or a worsted weight yarn and knitting myself a sweater or a cardigan with speckles. I think that would look really cool. My next whip is a birthday present for my brother. He doesn't watch the podcast, so no chance of anything being spoiled here. So during the day, I'm knitting on my completely insane secret Christmas knitting, and then in the evenings for an hour or two, when I just need a break from it and the light's not as good, I have been knitting on these socks. So here is this whip. And I'm using Knit Picks Stroll Heather in the Flagstone Heather colourway, and it's just a standard stock yarn, 75% wool, 25% nylon, and it's got, it's 65% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon and 10% Donegal tweed, and you can see the little flecks in there. It's quite nice. It is really soft and lovely. I'm really enjoying it, and I think he's going to quite like these socks. I don't have his foot around to measure, so I am going to do a little bit of guessing. I'm pretty sure I know what size shoe he takes, but hopefully that'll be okay. His birthday is coming up this weekend, and of course it's forecast to be very hot again, and I'm sure he won't be able to actually use those woolen socks for another few months, but it doesn't matter, they'll keep. And my next whip, you may remember me talking about some very long languishing whips in previous episodes, and the things that I'm about to show you next are two of those really long languishing whips, and I started these over a year ago, and it was when I did a huge stock take of all my crafting supplies, and I gave away lots of things that I knew I wasn't going to use. I threw things out that were no good anymore. I donated lots of things to charity stores, and then I was left with a big pile of sort of odds and ends of yarn, and most of them were in DK weight, and I had a lot of like half balls, a quarter of a skein of variegated yarns in all different colours, and they were all woolen, and I don't really fancy a variegated yarn. I have no idea why I have so many of them, so I thought they're actually lovely yarns. I don't want to throw them out, and they're probably not going to be of use to anyone if I give them away, because they're just such small amounts, you can't really do anything with them. So I thought, why don't I put them all together in one blanket, like a scrappy blanket, and literally use up every single scrap of this yarn. And so I'll work with one ball, and as soon as that runs out I just join the other ball in and keep going, not stopping at the end of a row to change colours or anything like that. I just wanted to use up literally every single yard of this yarn. So I decided that the best way to do that was to crochet a corner to corner blanket, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with the construction of it, but you will see it in a moment. It starts right in one corner and you increase so that you get a big triangle, and then once you're at the halfway point you then decrease, and you end up with a big square. Of course you can make them rectangle as well, but I'm making a square one. So what I did was I weighed all of this variegated yarn. I found out how much it weighed, and then I figured out how much half of that yarn would be, and I marked that ball and made a mark at the exact halfway point, and I took some photos of the order in which I wanted the yarn to go in, and I keep referring back to those photos. Like, I can see, okay, I plan to use that particular colourway next, and then I'm going to use that colourway and that colourway, so that I know exactly when I'm at the halfway point of all the yarn, so that I can start decreasing and finish it off. And hopefully I will have then used up all of this yarn, but we'll see. I'm going to show it to you now, but brace yourself, because this thing is hideous. It's seriously hideous, but I don't care. Sort of. And it's quite large already. So I'm probably not going to be able to show you properly. But there's the corner where I've begun. And you can see each row gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm now up to this. I don't know if you can really see what I've done with my selection for the order of the yarn, but it starts off bluish and then went sort of bluish greenish, and then bluish greenish reddish pinkish, and then some pink, and then I tried to go it's really hard with variegated yarn because you have all the different colours, but I tried to get it to go sort of in an order. I don't know, maybe I'm kidding myself there, but that's that hideous thing, and it actually feels really beautiful, and it's going to be an incredibly warm blanket when it's done, and I think it's going to be quite huge. I'm maybe a quarter of the way through it there, so it's going to be ginormous, which will be great. And I don't really want to have something that looks like that out in the open in the house. I'm not going to be using it as a decoration anywhere. It doesn't really match anything in my house, or it sort of matches all the things in my house at once. But I know that the kids will like to snuggle up on the couch with that, or maybe we'll use it when we're camping, or that might be a good blanket to use for playing outside and things like that. But one of the other things I discovered when I did my huge craft stock take was that I had lots and lots of partial balls of somewhat neutral coloured cotton, all in a DK weight, and they weren't really good for a whole project, and I just couldn't think of any way to use up every single piece in a bunch of individual projects, so I thought I'm just going to make another one of these corner to corner crochet blankets. And I did the same thing where I weighed my yarn, figured out how much it was, marked the halfway point, and I'll keep increasing until I get to the halfway point that's marked in my yarn, and then I'll start decreasing, and hopefully by the end of that I'll have used up all my DK scraps as well. And I want a cotton blanket for myself for the bed, because like I always keep saying in every single podcast, I think I've mentioned the weather. It gets incredibly hot here, and it's hot overnight, and sometimes it doesn't get below 30 degrees at night, and that's revolting. Like, you can barely sleep. It's very uncomfortable. And I just wanted a cotton blanket for those incredibly hot nights. So this one, I haven't quite gotten as far on this one, but on a few hot nights recently I've thought, why didn't I finish that cotton blanket? I really want it now. So that's encouraged me to keep going. But as you can see, I'm unravelling some of it as I pull it out of the bag. Great. Here we go. I don't know if you can tell, but there's actually 3 colours on there so far. So this sort of mild beigey colour, then an actual beige, and then a slightly warmer beige. So you get a bit of an idea of what it looks like. And they're real beautiful yarns in themselves. They're really gorgeous, but they're just not really enough to make a whole other proper object like a sweater or cardigan. So that's this blanket so far. I've got a fair way to go on this one. It's actually going to graduate into some pale greens and then into some light blues up to some medium blues, and I think that will look quite nice. I probably won't mind having that one hanging around out in the open in the house. It's not quite as ugly as the other one. And I'm housing this one in this project bag that I made using some hand screen printed fabric that I got at a market a few years ago. It's designed and hand printed by a very clever young woman in Melbourne. It's so pretty. I wish I had more of it, but I used up every single centimetre of it in making this bag. But I would really love a dress in that fabric. That is so cute, isn't it? And it's a beautiful linen that it's printed on. Now, my other whip is a little bit different. It's a spinning whip. And this is some yarn that I've been doing on my drop spindle. And this drop spindle is a 3D printed one, which is pretty cool. And it's from an Etsy shop called Turtle Made, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. If you're at all interested in using a Turkish spindle and you want to have a play around, I highly recommend these drop spindles. They're great value for money. The customer service is just fantastic. You can choose custom colours. They're beautifully weighted. They spin like crazy, which is good. And they're just so easy to use. I often recommend these to my students who are wanting to learn to use a drop spindle, and almost all of them start with a standard drop spindle with the circular whirl, and they all struggle immensely. And I've got many of these and I often lend them out to my students, and they bring them back next time and say how much easier spinning was and how much more success they had with these. And they're also good when you come to the point of plying your singles as well, just in case you're not familiar with the Turkish spindle. I don't have one here that I can pull apart, but what happens is you have your stem, the grey part here, and you've got two arms. I've got a gold one and a green one. And when you've finished spinning all your singles, you pull the stem out and you pull the arms out, and then you are left with something like this. I don't know if you can really get an idea of what it looks like. It's called a turtle. It sort of looks like a turtle. You can sort of, I don't know, if you use your imagination, it looks a bit like a turtle. And this is my singles. I don't know if you can see. They're quite fine on this one. And it's actually a centre pull ball once you take it off this the spindle. So you can actually apply it on itself with great ease. You don't have to wind it again to get a centre pull ball. It's ready to ply right now. So you take a strand from the outside, a strand from the middle, a strand from the middle, and you can just ply it back onto your drop spindle, your Turkish spindle, and it just makes life so easy. And you don't have to worry about accidentally adding or taking away twist in your singles when you're plying, or rewinding to get a centre pull ball. You haven't got two balls to contend with when you're plying, which can cause all sorts of fun, crazy tangles, as I have found out. So I really recommend, if you want to learn to spin on a drop spindle, go for a Turkish spindle first. It will just make your life so much easier. And once you've got the skills all there that you've learned by spinning with your drop spindle, with your Turkish spindle, go ahead and use all those gorgeous, special, fancy wooden drop spindles, which are gorgeous as well. And I have a few of those too, but I always go back to these. I just love them. And they're also really sturdy. I drop these frequently, and they never break or chip or do anything weird. And I've sat on them a few times, and I just chuck them in project bag and go. They're really good, really, really good. And it's kind of cool that they're 3D printed. I find that really fascinating. Yeah, I don't know if you can see the yarn that's coming up when I'm plying this, but it's really quite pretty. It's not in colours I would normally use. I really dislike maroon. It's probably the only colour I don't fancy, but I quite like this, so you know, maybe this yarn will change my mind about maroon. I'm not sure what I'll knit with this, but I'm thinking maybe it's coming out at about a fingering weight. I'm thinking maybe some foraging mittens by Molly from the Homespun House podcast, or maybe I'll knit a sweet little hat. I don't know. We'll see. Depends how much yardage I get, I guess. But I'm really enjoying that. This is actually a demonstration one that I use in my spinning classes, but I think I may as well finish plying it so I can actually use it, because my next spinning class isn't for a little while, so I'm sure I'll have time to make another sample before then. And that is living in a little bag that I use for my drop spindles, because they fit in there just nicely. I've actually got 2 in here and some fleece. Oh, look at that. Oh. So there's another one, and I've got a few more of those spindles around the place. And they're really good. I've actually got some finished spinning, because I don't have any knitting whips, because I've been so crazy flat out knitting on that secret Christmas knitting. Well, anyway, I thought I'd show you some finished spinning that I have. This one here is my very first spin that I did. So it's a little bit lumpy. You can especially see how lumpy it is there. I don't even know what was going on there. But most of it's pretty nice. It's totally usable. I think I've got about maybe 150 yards. It'd be enough for a nice hat, I think, or possibly even like a little shawlette or something. But it's a little bit precious to me, this skein of yarn, because it was my very first spin. And I often use that as a sample, of course, to show in classes, and people are always really interested to see it, especially if they're new to spinning and they don't have much access to hand spun yarn. It's nice to see something, you know, in the flesh of what you could make. And you can see the colours. This was just from one braid of fibre merino that had this orangey red and the yellow, and I didn't do anything in particular to the fibre before I spun it. I just spun it as it came along. I didn't try and manipulate the colours or anything like that, and I was so excited when I applied it and could see that it looked like this. I was really thrilled, and that's one of my favourite things about spinning with hand-dyed fibre, is you never really know exactly what your yarn is going to look like at the end, and I find that really delightful. Here is another finished spin that I've done recently. And this is a beautifully fine one, and it's mostly even. There's a few thick and thin spots in there, but it's not too bad. And of course I used the same, it's not two different colours or anything, it was a tonally dyed, really soft, squishy merino braid, and there's a few very subtle variations in the peachy kind of colour, but it's mainly all the one colour, and it is so beautiful. I love it so much. I'm so pleased with this. I'm scared to use it. I'm scared to knit it into something because I just love it. I might just have to keep it like this, and this is what it is. It's destiny. Now that's all for whips and finished objects. I seriously cannot wait to show you this secret Christmas knitting. It's seriously like the best thing I've ever made. And I think I would really like one for myself, but I think I need about a year's break in between finishing this current one and even thinking about starting another one, so we'll see how I go. But I do have a little acquisition to show you. It's not of the yarny variety, believe it or not. I'm still on my unintentional yarn diet. I have not purchased any yarn for almost 2 months now. This is unheard of, this is unprecedented, and I don't know how much longer it's going to last. I've been avoiding even looking online at yarn. One of the lovely members of my Ravelry group, Hannah, was it Hannah? Oh, maybe I don't know who said it. Sorry. Anyway, it was brilliant what you said, and it was a really excellent suggestion. I started a little discussion thread in my Ravelry group about maybe giving each other hints and tips of how to stick to a yarn diet, or how to be more sensible with your yarn purchasing and more mindful with your yarn purchases, because we all know that it's so easy to just buy beautiful yarn willy-nilly, and next thing you know you have this literal mountain of yarn, and there's just no possibility you are ever going to use it all, even if you did nothing else for the rest of your life but knit. And you know, there's so many beautiful yarns out there, and you don't want to leave them in the shop. What if they don't go to a good home? So I'm trying to be a lot more mindful about my yarn purchasing. Anyway, there's a great suggestion to unsubscribe from all yarn related email newsletters that you get, because I constantly have, you know, sale emails coming in from yarn companies, and I'm like, I love that yarn, maybe I want to get some. And if I'm not having those emails coming in about new stock or a new line or a new pattern that will go with this beautiful yarn and things like that, I'm not tempted. I think about them a lot less, of course, because they're not in my face. So I've done that. I've unsubscribed from a whole lot of the knitting company, yarn related, fibre related email newsletters that I was getting, and I actually wrote them down in a book as I was unsubscribing to them, so that if I feel like it in the future I can resubscribe to all of them. But since not having those constantly popping up in my email feed, it's been great. It's been pretty noticeable, really, how less frequently I am inclined to go and search online for yarn. And I only have one actually local yarn store, and they're closed at the moment, so there's been no temptation there, although I am thinking about projects that I really want to make with yarn that I don't already own, and I'm trying to be sensible and thinking about the things I actually want to wear, that I want to make to wear, and I've got all these summery projects on the go already. They need to be finished before I can wear them, and it just doesn't make any sense for me to start knitting on some glorious winter woolly sweater now when I've got all these beautiful summer things hanging around that are half finished and I could be wearing them in a week or two. So I'm trying to be a lot more mindful about that. So I have I got 2 new acquisitions. Neither of them are yarn related. This one in particular is so fabulous. I walked into this shop and I was just sort of casually looking around, and then I saw this thing and I just about lost my breath because it was so great. Look, it's a glow mesh clutch purse thing with cockatoos on it, stripes and cockatoos. I have a lot of these birds at my place. They hang around in the backyard all day long. They can be pretty noisy, and I tell you what, a baby cockatoo makes the actual most hideous noise on earth. They're really cute, but they make a dreadful, dreadful noise. Thankfully, they only make that noise for a few weeks while they're still in the nest. But seriously, how cool is it? I'm just mad for this thing. Just pretty simple on the inside, and it has a little chain to hold onto it. I thoroughly love it. Oh god, it's so good. And that is made by the Creatively Active Minds. And I thought, well, that sounds like me. And it's actually made in Australia, which is a bit of a bonus. I just love it. Merry Christmas to me. And the other thing that I got, I don't have it with me, is I got a Fitbit. And I've wanted one for ages. And they were on sale on Boxing Day, and I thought, well, I might as well get it now. And I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying using it. It's really fascinating. I particularly am enjoying how it keeps a track of my sleep and when I'm awake and restless during the night. And I think as time goes on, I might see a pattern, and it might encourage me to do things a little bit differently around bedtime, so that I'm having a more restful sleep and being a bit more mindful of actually getting enough sleep. I tend to be a bit careless with how much sleep I get, and I could really do some more, as I'm sure we all could. But one thing that I have noticed with the Fitbit is that it picks up my knitting action and registers the knitting action as a step. And obviously I'm not getting the same amount of exercise with my knitting as I am with a step, and so it's sort of a bit of a false reading. Initially I had the Fitbit on my right wrist, and I'm left-handed. I thought that would be the most sensible thing to do, but I am an English style knitter and I do the throw, and I think that action is what is registering as a stitch. So I swap the Fitbit over to my left hand, and it registers about half the amount of stitches or steps as when I have it on my right wrist, so that's a start. And I noticed when I was knitting on the socks that it barely registered at all, regardless of which wrist I had it on. But when I'm knitting on this thing for my secret Christmas knitting, it's different actions. There's a lot of knitting and purling going on at the same time, and I'm doing a lot of this action, I think, swapping my yarns, and it's I don't know, is there a way, I don't know enough about them. Do you have a Fitbit and you know of a way to counteract those false steps registering when you're knitting? If you know any more information about them, that'd be really great. If you could let me know in the Ravelry group. Also, if you have a look in the Ravelry group, if you've got any hot tips about how to stick to a yarn diet, or things that have worked for you in the past, or something that you're doing now to be a bit mindful of your crafty hoarding, put it in that thread, because I'm sure everyone would enjoy reading that. And I love sharing knowledge, I love learning from other people, even if it's something simple like unsubscribing from Yarny related e-newsletters. That suggestion was so brilliant. So thank you to whoever suggested that. Apologies that I can't remember your name at this moment. So I think that's everything that I have to talk about today. If you are celebrating New Year's Eve tomorrow or today, depending when this podcast comes out or when you see it, I hope it's brilliant. I hope you have a safe celebration, and I hope it's exactly what you want, not too hectic, just right. Maybe you'll even get some crafting done. It's usually a good night to stay home and do crafting because everyone else is out. You'll have some dedicated crafting time there. And if you're starting any sort of New Year cast on, that'd be great. Let me know about it. I really love seeing what everyone else is doing. I get so much inspiration from all the clever people in the crafting community, and I'm so pleased to be a more interactive part of that community as well now with the podcast and the Ravelry group. So thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed, left me a beautiful comment, suggestions, tips. I'm so thankful, and I really enjoy being a part of this interactive crafting community. So Happy New Year to everyone, and I will see you again in 2016. Right, thank you very much.